Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Joey Reese. Welcome to the Practice Center, where today we're going to be talking about all things
mindfulness, forgiveness, attitudinal healing, and aloha.
Yes, I'm here with Melinda. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here, my friend. Melinda, welcome.
Sure. Thank you so much, Joey. And thank you for just accompanying me on this journey and starting me on this journey. I just so am appreciative of you and all the peers that's in this group. So before mindful forgiveness, I was really had a lot of self-doubt. I was just burdened by my inner critic. And also I felt the burden of others judging me, whether or not they really did, but I thought of that, so that was always just heavy on me. And it really it colored my entire way of being, if that even makes sense, because I was just always under that crushing layers of expectations from myself and also what I thought others expected of me. And so it was a heavy burden. And after mindful forgiveness, one of the biggest immediate things that affected my being and my spirit was that it really unburdened me. It unburdened me. So I 2 degrees, right? So like the biggest thing was the unburdening of a 33-year grievance. And that was just like gold to me because it gave me inner peace. So yeah, that's me, the before mindful forgiveness and me after. And it's still a work in progress, but I really, again, appreciate you, Joey, and your leadership and the mentorship that you've offered, as well as the community and at the practice center. So thank you so much. So the crushing burden for me really, in some ways, it is kaumaha, or the grief, the heaviness of grief, in terms of like, I'm not who is, but I'm not the perfect person. And no one is, we know that. Now you know that. But I'm not a perfect person. I am an imperfect person. And for me, it was hard because I felt like I had to live up to that, those expectations. A lot of it was myself burdening myself with that. And then a lot of it was just the grief, multiple grief through traumas and lived experiences that I've had, where I buried myself, literally buried myself. So I didn't feel feelings. I didn't even know how to label feelings if they did pop up now and then. And so it was really just the numb person, just numb. And I would numb through, I'm 34 years in recovery from alcohol and drugs, but I had replaced that addiction with food. It's a transfer addiction to food. And so I would eat my feelings, literally and metaphorically, and just be numb, right? And so for starting with the first group I was in, my friend who was in the group with me would always tell me, who was her mantra, feel the feels, was always telling me, because I would try to stifle it when things were bubbling up through sessions. And then through that 6 weeks, I learned to just sit and feel and even just process, what is it that I'm feeling?
What do you do now? How do you know you're feeling feelings differently now?
Yes, great question. And I will also do the caveat that I've also been working with a therapist all along this time too.
Yes.
Started with my journey towards mindful forgiveness. And I really did. And it's funny because listening to other people's interviews, I kind of was giggling to myself because I'm like, everyone's like, oh, I'm not woo-woo, but like, hey, I'm woo-woo. Like, I'm woo-woo. I believe in like metaphysical, and I believe in looking for signs and all of that kind of stuff. And in the Hawaiian culture, there's a word called ho'ailona. So it's like looking for the signs, and the signs are coming to you. And so I feel like this is how mindful forgiveness came to me. It wasn't on my radar at all. And it started, let me back up real quick too. At first, everything started converging when the pandemic hit, right? And so I basically had a pandemic meltdown, like a epic pandemic meltdown. So what happened was, all my life, people came to me for help, whether it's my clients, whether it's family members, sometimes even supervisors, like everyone was. And so when the pandemic started coming, like even people who didn't usually come to me started coming to me because they were reaching out for help. And these were other clinicians. And I was like, oh, it's okay. But then what was happening was I wasn't getting replenished myself, and I wasn't having that vehicle to let it go. And so, and I was stuck in my little room, which is kind of like a cave. It's very dark where I am. But I just felt like the world was closing in on me. And I literally had a crisis. I felt like I was in a crisis and I finally needed help. So I reached out, first of all, to EAP, which is like offered through my work. And it's an employee assistant program. And I thought, hey, I'm going to go do my 6 sessions and check, I'll be good. Right. So I had called the guy, I'm so thankful he took my call. He took my call and he was so nice, and he asked probing questions. And he was like, Melinda, you need therapy. You don't need EAP. So he told me that, and I was like, oh. And then I was like, oh, I don't know if I want therapy, but okay, tell me more. He literally gave me a script of what to say when I called Kaiser. He told me in exact words what to say. So I called Kaiser. So this is what I mean about why I feel it's all divine, intervention. So, we'll see. And this is another thing. I am feeling my feelings now too in my body.
What are you feeling right now?
In my throat. So where it's coming. Yeah. When I first started feeling feelings, it was in my na'au or my belly. And now it's been coming in my throat. So,
but why are you feeling it right now as you're telling me the story? Why right now? What's happening?
That's a good question, because like I never asked for help before, like other than like a quick fix, kind of like everything, like I was a walking head. Like I over intellectualized everything. I processed things, but I never really went through my heart and through my na'au to really dig in, if that even makes sense,
Yes.
So when this guy told me, call Kaiser, what to do, I hung up and I called. This is like, I think May 2020. Hung up, called Kaiser right away, got a live person on the phone. I said directly what that guy told, the script he told me what to say. That person said, hold on a second, all our clinicians are fill up, but I can get you an outside clinician and get it approved. And she literally in 5 minutes gave me the phone number, everything for an outside clinician. I called that clinician. She set me up for an interview the next day. Like, and I've been working with her ever since. And it's really, she's been like the perfect fit for me and has been accompanying me along the journey. So yeah, and so it is all of these things working together. So then now mindful forgiveness. I started listening to Dr. Luskin's videos, like just live videos. And what struck the chord for me was because like I'm an info junkie. So like I took advantage of all these free webinars and blah, blah, blah. So at first this was one of Dr. Luskin's thing. I'm like, oh, I'm going to just listen while I'm working, right? And then he literally makes you stop and pause and do the mindfulness practice. And it was so refreshing to me to do that. And I felt so energized at the end of those 1 hour lunch and learn sessions that I was drawn to that. And then somehow one of my colleagues, Stacy, was like, hey, there's a trainers for mindful forgiveness, and I got on that. I hopped on that, and then later on, I did the group with you and Joan and with Shelley in the fall of 2020. And everything kind of coalesced and came together in a living way,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and I feel like it was therapy, mindful forgiveness, and really the mindfulness practice, the forgiveness and having the steps in how to forgive, as well as like the work I've been doing at my organization with kind of Hawaiian cultural practices of healing, such as ho'opono, which is getting things right, with yourself and others. And then also my work in grief work or kaumaha, heavy burdens of grief. I feel like everything is coming together. And then, recently I've just graduated today from a boundaries boot camp, and that also is also a catalyst to like light that fire and bring everything together, and really helping me to move forward and be more assertive, and do things like apply for IVAT, to do an IVAT presentation, like just.
We're going to get to that. That's
to
so
share with
amazing. Really proud of you.
Thank
Really
you.
proud of you. I do have a question about your grief work.
Yes.
So in your professional life, you are a helper, you are a counselor, you're a therapist.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And you were doing grief work.
Yes.
And yet here at the beginning, when you introduced yourself, you were talking about the crushing weight of unexpressed grief for yourself.
Yes. Yep.
So can you talk to me about how does one live life where your professional hat and your personal life is so disconnected?
That's a really excellent question. And it is a phenomenon.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. Like one of my, on a strengths finder thing, like my number one is connectedness, right? So I really have that. It is a gift, I feel like, to be able to connect with others and to make connections with other people. However, not with myself. Like, you know, I was never willing to like go in there and just dig in and excavate, you know, dig in, excavate, peel the onion, because I just didn't want to go there for several reasons. Partly did I even, I partly, and now since I've done just, you know, the boundaries work, it's like, I did not even think like I mattered. You know what I mean? Like I didn't even feel like I mattered to myself. And it feels sad for me to say that, you know, and to have that realization, because like I care so much about other people, but I didn't really care about myself, you know? Yeah.
Where are you with that right now?
Oh, I'm doing very well. And I, you know, every now and then I hear that little inner critic who I used to call her anxiety girl. I even had a little cartoon, and I actually like would joke about it all the time, like anxiety girl. And, but like my anxiety girl has now been replaced by my inner ally, which is manoahine, which means like strong woman, like, you know, this power, feminine power of, and really I'm feeling it, you know, I'm really feeling it. I'm living it, and I feel that power, and I know that I matter, you know? Yeah. So, well, yeah.
I see the truth of that in your face, man. I mean, as you're saying that, it is shining from inside out. So I do see a very connected woman in front of me when we're talking about this. So there has been definitely a shift and transition. I see the growth in there.
I feel like that intergenerational trauma went through that thread, and yeah. So yeah. Wait, what was your question? Oh, for myself and the grief, and if how I'm, if it's changing how I'm doing the grief work. So I'm saying in a way, yes, because even though it's not grief work, by doing mindful forgiveness groups, I feel like I'm using these skills to help people unburden themselves. And a lot of times it is kamaha or grief underneath there, right? It is that root. And so I'll say, yes, it has helped me in doing grief work in that context.
Yeah, I mean, I that's what I imagine. So but I'm not really in the grief work, except I am.
Yes.
Right. But I've never considered myself a grief counselor before. So there's nothing for me to compare it to. So that's why I was interested to see if it impacted your work at all. So it sounds like you've always been skilled in your grief work. You just have additional ways that you can help people unburden.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
The tools from mindful forgiveness is just so beautifully simple.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if you see a difference in the way that you're interacting with people and what you take away now.
Definitely, because I would absorb people's energies, which, you know, I heard Joan talking a little bit about that too. And I feel like a lot of us in the helping professions, if you're not really practicing self-care, it can eat you alive, you know, like you can just do a number on your health and mental health, you know. So it's that unburdening and lightness. So I am not taking on people's things, which I was doing before. Like even just coming, remember I said earlier, this is my, I don't know if it was being recorded, but my most happiest, unstressed holiday season in my entire life, you know. And it's high stress time, you know, and I've learned to not take on other people's battles for them, which is what I used to do. And it's just kind of shocking how much I did that kind of stuff, you know. And part of it, some people actually did ask for the help, you know, but it wasn't mine to do, you know, because people have to do it themselves oftentimes, you know.
That's right.
I've learned to just and you weren't really, I wasn't helping people when I did for them, you know. And that's another big realization and aha. So I'm in my space. It's actually called the beautifully boundaried space of honor and respect for others, which I always had, but also for myself, which I did not have. So that's the space that I'm in. And I've been operating in that for the last 8 weeks. And I just, I feel so light, you know.
Wow. So you have included yourself in your own life. Amazing.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. I matter. So like before other people mattered, I didn't matter. So I would hide myself. I would shrink myself. I would accommodate. I would, not make waves or, but now it's just like, not like I'm going to make waves, but I'm going to stand up for myself, you in a space of respect and honor. My thoughts and feelings, like it's the inner critic, like I said, has been quelled, before, like even just little things that I didn't even realize I used to do all the time. That my therapist early on was telling me I was doing that. She was basically told me, stop doing that. Like I would do something and I'd be like, oh my God, dummy. Or like, I'd be like, porgy, or like I would do it. And she's like, why do you do that? So that is like, before it used to be 99%, now it's like 15%, and it's getting lesser and lesser. So I'm not even doing that, or even the self-deprecating thing, which I used to do all of that. Part of that was all about me just trying to be invisible or small, or and really just hiding my light, kind of thing. So I'm not hiding my light, I'm not crouching, I'm not in that shame space. And it's really great, and to now when you start about feeling feelings, of course, what happens when you numb your feelings is you numb everything. You numb all the feelings, of good, quote, good feelings, and also the not so good feelings that don't feel so good. And I'm just, by feeling my feelings and being able to label them, it's given me a richer lived experience. You know what I mean? I'm not just in my little cave, just over consuming everything, food, information, like that's what I do. Like I voracious in getting information, and but that was also a form of numbing.
Yes.
Yep. So just being still and doing mindful practice every day, even if it's just 5 minutes. I'm aiming for the 20 minutes every day. And it just helped me to still myself and to just breathe through feelings that maybe don't feel the best, like anger, sadness, loneliness, all of that kind of stuff. And just to sit with those feelings and like breathe through them. Yeah, use the diaphragmatic breathing really works for me. And I think that it really like automatically helps me to calm down.
Yeah.
Because like all my old coping mechanism, healthy and unhealthy, were not working. And I knew that. And I knew like I was circling the drain, and I was like trying to grasp for whatever I could get to fill my well. And like my well's been filled though, like everything now, in a good way, Yeah. So it did need to seep into my bones, which it has. Everything working together has been marinating, seeping. And yes, to know it's not enough. And my good friend and colleague, Palama, always tells me, because I used to be, my favorite phrase was knowledge is power, right? But he would be like, no, girl. It's like, applied knowledge is power. That's what he was telling me all the time. Applied knowledge is power. So it is like, you can have all this knowledge, but if you're not using it, it's just, what is it, stuck in your head? It's just stuck in your head. Taking the action and like, but by something about doing action, even if it's just little things, even if it is just a perception shift, a mindset shift, but then also in the way in how you are comporting yourself. I mean, for me, it started small that way, in little things, attitudinal shifts, carrying who I am, like carrying who I am, to be able to then fill my well, and then so I could help others if they need it. That's the other distinction, because I was just getting into everybody else's things, and no, that was not healthy.
So can you name 1 or 2 action items in terms of how do you care for Melinda?
Yes. How do I care for Melinda? Okay, so I already named my meditation practice. I actually call it my daily hygiene. It's included in my daily hygiene. So I do
Perfect.
mirror meditation as well when I'm brushing my teeth. Like that was, I mean, I did that with my therapist because I didn't even like looking at myself, right? So
Mhm.
just by practicing that every day, looking at myself in the mirror, not just my head either. I used to be the floating head, but I look at my entire self. So that's one, is doing the mirror meditation every day. And then the other thing is, I think it's just to be settled enough in myself that I am being assertive rather than passive, or even I would overcorrect into the aggressive space. So like
Yes.
I'm being assertive now. So I am, if something is before, if something would be like triggering me, or like I felt somebody's encroaching my boundaries, I just, again, like I said, shrink. But now I'll just be like, be able to say like, oh, that's not, I'm not feeling that, I'm not feeling that. And and to be able to set that boundary. And again, boundaries aren't me telling other people what to do. It isn't. It's like me. It's, you're just saying like, hey, but if you're going to do that, this is what I'm going to do. Like,
Yeah.
so it's such a distinction. It is a small but very important distinction. And it is like you're asserting yourself. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. If you could set up the scene a little bit with who are you culturally speaking, ethnically speaking, and then how you've integrated this work that feels very Western to some in a way that feels authentically able to fit in with Aloha work.
Um, the organization so I'm Melinda. You guys have been hearing me talk for a while now. So I identify as Native Hawaiian, even though I am Welsh, Chinese, Native American, Jewish, a whole bunch of stuff, but I identify as Native Hawaiian. And it's the essence of me. That's what I feel. It's the essence of me. I know I have all my ancestors running through my veins. So, and I also work for an organization that serves Native Hawaiian children and families and communities. And so I've been working there for 26 years. And so everything that we do, even if it's a Western intervention, we make sure it's culturally resonant. We call it culturally resonant. And so some things we might have to tweak a little bit, either using using language and or Hawaiian concepts, just to make it so that it's genuine for our families, so it feels good, because there's a layer of for many marginalized populations like Native Hawaiians, dispossessed like Native Hawaiians and Native Americans, there's historical trauma, and on top of that, it's layered with other traumas, right, that come from that. And so, by helping our families, our children and families, to really peel those onions and really get to a state of healing, is we use culture as, I call it culture as curative, using the culture as a way, as the wayfinding place for our families to make connections, even if they've been disconnected and never even maybe perhaps felt a connection to the culture before. It's really amazing work. So when doing mindful forgiveness, I've had colleagues in the Hilo office that we have who've gone through mindful forgiveness as a group, as staff, and they benefited personally and also professionally as a unit, right, by doing that beautiful work. And they, just like me, see the value of it. So they brought it to their families, including working with children and adults. And then also there's been some of us who also taken this to our colleagues across the state and offering mindful forgiveness to our colleagues as professional development, And so this kind of work, we're very passionate about it, those of us who have been doing it, because we've seen the healing of mindful forgiveness, right? So what we've done is, and I think that there's no other way we could have done it than the way we're doing it, is by imbuing the value of aloha, which basically really does mean love. It just means resonant love. I mean, yeah, it also means goodbye, hello, goodbye, but the core of aloha really is love, and that essence of love for self and for others. And so just by being the clinicians that we are, many of us are Native Hawaiian, but you don't have to be Native Hawaiian to do this. First of all was Aloha. So when we started doing, Laura, another colleague, and I from Hilo, did our RPD for our staff. We called it Mindful Forgiveness with Aloha. We added that on. And it really is just in the approach and how we, at first, we didn't flesh it out too much. It really was just in the approach on how we're in that aloha space with each other, right? And it is in the sharing of our mo'olelo or our stories, which we do in Mindful Forgiveness, and that exchange of aloha, the breath of life with each other is partly, it's really the venue for us to layer the 6 steps. That's even making sense to you. So we leaned into, because, our organization was founded by Queen Liliuokalani. So we used Queen Liliuokalani's story of her grief and how she managed her grief and how she managed to forgive her oppressors. And we used her personal story as a role model, as a thread throughout our sessions. We've all, myself included, had this it didn't feel cultural, right? Because for myself personally, I felt revenge fantasies at the time. I felt that I would manifest whatever this is. That was my feeling, and I feel that was a cultural origin, that feeling of that. But as going through the process, I realized how important that is, right? And so what I did was I went to, so Laura did tell me, hey, this is going on. What's going on, and so I said, hey, let's look to the source, Nana Ike Kumu, which is a series of books, of cultural books. And so looked in there, and there's different things, but they talk about where you have hala or problems, and then you have hihia, where the problems are all entangled and but then it talks about untangling these, and part of it is because that connection to your oppressor or the person you have a grievance about, you're tethered to that. And there's a Hawaiian cultural term for that, right? And part of the ways of releasing that is by working through the hihia, and part of it is through that revenge fantasy process, and then release and releasing it. And so I'm also secondhand, but I feel like after that woman processed through, she got it, and she got, so 2 colleagues and myself, we, Stacy and Laura, we submitted to the IBAT conference in Hawaii in spring of next year, and it was accepted, and
spring
it was
of this year. Spring of this year.
2022, yes. Oh gosh, I'm still stuck in 2021. Yes, so we're going to be presenting, and it is, and we had to do a little tap dancing too, because we had a lot of questions from the committee members before they accepted us, a lot of misconceptions about what mindful forgiveness was, particularly because we specifically went into the cultural track. And we know as providers and helping professionals that there, again, the layer of trauma, right? The cultural historical trauma on top of the other traumas. And if you go at it, in the wrong approach, you could do more harm. So I totally understand the questions that were being lobbed at us. So there's several times we got, asked, they asked several probing questions about, what is this? How is this cultural? We had to explain ourselves. And it was good that they gave us these, because we realized what people are thinking. And we didn't know that, So right. When we're going into our presentation on April 1st, we're going to be answering a lot of those myths that people might have about mindful forgiveness with Aloha. And we're going to be leaning into that space. And it's just, we have a general outline, but we're going to dig into it, the next coming weeks on really fleshing out a rich experiential presentation, where it's going to be not just talking at people, but they're going to actually be able to practice.
Oh, I'm so excited for that. So excited for that.
So yes, I just finished out one group this past fall, and then going to be leading another group in spring. Not quite sure yet when. And it's mostly going to be dealing with my colleagues, you know, at the organization I work with, but I'm going wide. If other people want to join, they're very welcome to join. And it can be Native Hawaiians, it could be other clinicians, it could just be anybody who's interested in wanting to really, you know, unburden themselves.
Beautiful.
So, you know, whether or not you're a woo-woo person, this has something for everyone, you know. And so mindful forgiveness with Aloha is really just being in that space of honoring yourself and honoring others as they're working to unburden themselves from the deeply entrenched, sometimes not so much, but deeply entrenched grievances that they may be carrying around like a bunch of heavy rocks in their backpack. And so anyone who's interested in unburdening themselves, really take a look at mindful forgiveness.
Perfect. So if people are interested in working with you, where can they find you? How do they get a hold of you?
So the practice center, we have there's a website, and you can get me through there, or just look me up on Facebook, Melinda Lloyd. Okay, aloha.
Aloha. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.